Thank you. So, good morning, everybody. Come on. Have you all been killed by GDPR compliance conversations this morning? Hopefully, I'll not do the same before lunch. I think Microsoft are on after me and one other who I can't recall whom. IBM. My apologies, IBM. How could we forget IBM? So, look, I've got 30 minutes. What I'm going to share with you today is Veritas' route to GDPR compliance. We've designed a framework with software technology and services that enables customers to deliver a GDPR framework to effectively deliver compliance against GDPR regulations. Just to give you some background, any customers of Veritas in the room? No. Okay, interesting. Veritas are one of the largest software companies in the world, but yet very few people have actually heard of us. We're predominantly known in the backup, disaster recovery, and high availability space. And it's because of that legacy that we have been able to tap into the information that we effectively manage and deliver this framework to our customers. Maybe I should take the clicker, because then I can fire on some slides. So I've been with Veritas for 14 years. As Glenn rightly pointed out, I do cover 101 countries. I hear and see lots of things from customers and partners in our channel community throughout my travels. And for some reason, this has decided to stop working. There we go. But predominantly, all my conversations are focused around this one thing, and that thing is IT. Does anybody know what IT stands for in the room? I would hope so. Okay. The second word is really easy. Right? Technology. But this is where everybody gets confused. Because the first I is actually information, right? Now you might say, well, that's common practice. That's what I expected you to say, Geoff. However, if you're a CIO and your title is Chief Information Officer, or you're an IT manager and your title is Information Technology Manager, where do those people typically spend all their dollars, all their budget, and all their time and resources? Let me tell you, it's not on information. It's on infrastructure. They spend typically 80% of their time on the infrastructure that supports the information, and only 20% of their budget, resources, and time on the information itself. What is the most important asset? Is it the infrastructure or the information? And clearly the answer is it's actually the information. So why do you spend only 20% of your time, budget, and resource on that information? So these are the things that you have to balance as a CIO or an IT manager, and typically these are the challenges that our customers face. They have to balance value, opportunity, and benefit, which is what IT is supposed to bring in terms of big data analytics, in terms of supporting backup infrastructure. But then again, all these things on the right-hand side add cost, complexity, and risk, right? IT is all about delivering these things back to the business, but yet it comes at a cost. IT is not cheap, it's expensive. You have to conform to compliance regulations, just like GDPR. South Africa has POPI, Turkey has KVKK. All these different regulations are built around the GDPR type framework, and that associates risk to your business, financial risk and brand and reputational risk if you cannot conform to compliance. So, we believe this is a very true statement. If you have the truth in your information and understand the real truth behind the information that you hold as an organization, you can manage both. So both the value add and the cost, the compliance, and the complexity associated around risk. This is effectively what Veritas' vision and mission is all around. So we believe we are the truth in information, helping the most important enterprises globally protect their most important asset, which is their data. Okay, the information that they have. Let me give you some data points here. Anybody know the largest hotel chain in the world? Hazard a guess. Starts with Marriott. Perfect, okay. Marriott were the largest hotel chain in the world until 4 months ago. Right? They've got market capitalization of $14 billion, actually, as it happens, own 14,000 hotels globally. A lot of infrastructure and asset tied up in money and in physical property. They've just been overtaken by Airbnb with a market capitalization of $16 billion. Airbnb own nothing. All they own is the information about the hotels. So you see all of a sudden that the important asset is not the infrastructure or the property or the physical asset. It's the integrity of the information to help make Airbnb so successful. Okay. Another example, the largest car manufacturing company in the world is Ford. Everything that was built in the Midwest of America, out of Chicago and Denver and Michigan, these were the heavy industry of car manufacturing, the automotive industry. Ford have actually just been overtaken in market capitalization by Tesla. Tesla is a company that's grown up in Silicon Valley in San Francisco, right? Yes, they manufacture, but the core value of Tesla is the data upon which their cars are actually operating. It's information. It's not the physical structure of the automotive vehicle. So you see here, data is physically company's most important asset, and that's what Veritas are all about protecting. Now, why do I tell you this? Because clearly GDPR revolves around information and data. And until you understand that information and data that you have, you cannot build a framework to comply with GDPR. And that's what I'm going to talk you through today. As I said, on my travels, I clearly meet with a lot of customers. I meet with a lot of partners. And I can probably summarize for everybody in this room today 5 business challenges that our customers and partners are facing specifically around data. And this is what Veritas are here to help you understand. The first one is data growth. Everybody knows data is growing. In fact, IDC have just produced a statistic which I think is incredible, that 90% of the world's data was created in the last 2 years. Now, you might think that's hard to believe, but a specific example that I think highlights that is everybody remembers Neil Armstrong landing on the moon in the 1960s. How many pictures of Neil Armstrong do you think were taken when he landed on the moon? I can count them in one hand. The answer's 5. 5 photographs. My daughter took more photographs of herself with her mates when she was out at a nightclub and posted them on Instagram within 15 seconds. Right? So you see the social media is fueling this data growth. And that obviously has an impact on the volumes that we need to manage with GDPR. The second thing that I always hear our customers talk about is data fragmentation. Customers used to keep all their data on their own premises because it was safe. If there was a fire, that was a problem. So we invented this concept of a disaster recovery site. Data would fail over from your primary site to your disaster recovery site. We now have this thing called cloud. Okay, so it might reside on-prem, it might reside in your DR site, but could also appear in something like an Amazon cloud, a Microsoft Azure cloud. So all of a sudden you see your data in multiple different locations. How do you know where that data resides? How do you know who's got access to that data? So the fragmentation of data is a big business problem that our customers are trying to solve as well. Add to the fragmentation, how do I ensure that I have availability to my information so that if I am requested to retrieve information about a specific customer or personal data, how do I know where to find it? How do I know how highly available that information to me is if it's in a cloud or if it's in my DR site? So availability of information leads to a number of things. If you cannot provide availability of information to an individual or to a customer or a company, that has reputational risk associated with it. You know, if you can't access your online banking account, as an example, you clearly risk the brand of your bank to that consumer. And then the other piece that's really associated with that is clearly financial risk. You cannot produce data within 28 days against the GDPR framework. You are liable to penalties as a consequence. So availability is critical. And that leads into number 4, which is compliance. How do I prove that I am compliant? How do I prove that I have access to all my information in a timely manner, that it's highly available, despite the fact that it's fragmented across 3, 4, 5 different locations, and the fact that I know my data is growing at 20 to 30 to 40% per annum. That's a big challenge. The final one for me actually is the most important though. And this is where we've built our framework around for GDPR. And the final one is data visibility. What do I mean by that? You need to be able to understand how much information you have, where that information is stored, when that information was last accessed, who has access to that information, who has access to that information that maybe shouldn't have access to that information. But how do you do that when your data is growing exponentially, when it's fragmented across multiple data sources, when it may or may not be highly available because it's 7, 10 years old and you don't actually know where it sits, and you need to prove compliance to GDPR. So for me, driving visibility of information in your organization is the number one place where we believe we can drive the value at Veritas. In order to try and prove that, we organised a survey over the last 12 months, a very significant survey. We went out to over 1,000 CIOs in companies across Europe, Middle East and Africa. And I say that very specifically. It wasn't America-centric, it wasn't Asia-Pacific, but this was all to do with CIOs' understanding of how they perceived they were managing their data in Europe, Middle East and Africa. Many of those CIOs were actually in the Baltics, okay, so this is very directly related to the countries around Latvia and including Latvia. What was very interesting though was the CIOs came back and classified their data in 3 very distinct formats, and I'll talk you through them very quickly just now. So bearing in mind the question that they were asked was, if you were to classify your data in terms of how easy it is to get access to, what would your answer be? The first lot of CIOs came back, and actually 15% of them said that their data was what they called clean data. It's classified, I know exactly where I can find it, and I can lay my hands on it within the 28 boundary period of GDPR if I am asked to do that. Only 15%. 32% came back, 33%, sorry, came back and said that their data was what we classified as rot. And rot stands for redundant, obsolete, or trivial. I'll give you examples of each. Redundant, I want you to think about maybe a customer that you've dealt with or a project that you've worked on that's 7 years old. That project is sitting on a SharePoint portal somewhere. But guess what you're still doing? You're still backing that data up. You're still replicating that SharePoint portal. You will never speak to that customer ever again. You have got no need for that data. Why are you keeping it? It's redundant data. Obsolete. How many times do you create a Word document or a PowerPoint presentation? You get to version 6 or 7. Do you ever look at versions 5 or 6 again? Versions 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5? No, you don't. You keep them on your hard drive and you back your local hard drive up to your local server. Your local server gets replicated to your DR site. All of a sudden, you've now got 7, 8, 9 copies of 5 or 6 files that you will never review again. So this comes back to the exponential growth of data is fueling this problem. Redundant data, obsolete data, and then trivial. How many of you back up your iTunes library to your company laptop? Okay? Or how many of you store your family photos on your company laptop, which is then backed up to your local server? It's not the responsibility of a corporate organization to back up your personal files or replicate your personal files or store that data. So it's trivial data. And it's adding to this monstrous mountain of ever-growing data. So between that's 48% that CIOs could actually say, you know what, I can lay my hands on some of it. I know some of it I probably shouldn't have. The worrying part, though, is that 52% of CIOs came back and said that their data was what they classed as dark data. I have got no idea what it is. I know I'm backing it up because I know I'm storing it. I've got no idea where it resides. I've got no idea whose names are involved in the data that I have. This was the biggest worry. So this was effectively validation for us that companies have problems. If I'm backing up 100 terabytes, 52 terabytes of which I've got no idea what it is. So I could be held to ransom under GDPR. I'm holding data against somebody that I should not have. That's a worry. Again, this was validation. So in terms of how can Veritas help, we have built a 5-step process, or a 5-phase process, if you will, software-driven. Okay, so it's fully automated to manage your information with services capability as well, so we can help with professional services. But let me talk you very quickly through these 5 steps. The first one is you need to be able to locate your data. And that sounds like a really simple statement. I need to understand where my data is. But it's actually a lot harder than you think so. So the first one is locate your data, to uncover personal data and make it visible so that then you can take action with that data. And we have software tools that will enable companies to pinpoint every single piece of data, whether it's on-premise, in your disaster recovery site, or in any cloud. No matter what type of data it is, we can uncover what that data is. I'm not going to enter the specific products behind this today. This is just a high-level overview of how we can help. So once you've located the data, you then need to be able to provide a search engine and classification engine so that you can find that information in the event that you are requested to find information about a given individual or personal data. Once you've searched that data, you may want to actually delete some because you found out, to my SharePoint portal example earlier, you no longer deal with that customer. Actually, financial regulations say, or health regulations say, I can only keep medical records on this particular patient for 10 years. This data is 12 years old, I can then delete it. So you can form remediation through minimizing the volume of data that you have and then placing controls around that to automate, control, and manage the life cycle of that information moving forward as well. Once you've actually found out what data you should be keeping and what data you should be deleting, you want to be able to protect the data that you have. So by that I mean you need to back it up, you need to replicate it, you need to provide high availability to that data in the event of a disaster so that you can retrieve that information in the event of any loss, damage, or indeed breach that you may have as well. Now once you've protected that information, the final phase of the project is that you want to continually monitor and evaluate your systems so that you can prove compliance in the event of any GDPR search that you may be requested to do. And it's a cyclical process, okay? So again, you'll continue to locate, search, minimize, protect, and monitor on an ongoing basis in a completely automated fashion, okay? You can see here all the articles from GDPR that specifically relate to each. And you'll see here that actually most articles are actually covered by this framework that we have put in place today. There's quite a few people taking pictures, so I'll let you do that. All right for time, Glenn? Okay. All right, nearly done anyway. So that's the physical framework. In terms of how do we go about doing it, though, it's all very well saying there's some nice software tools, on you go and play with your own information, right? That's absolutely not what we would do for you. So the first thing we can offer you is a half-day GDPR workshop, right? So we would actually come in, assess a subset of your business, a subset of your information, and provide you with an insight, literally an insight, into the types of information you are holding, the types of information you may be holding that you should not be holding, information on when information was last accessed, the number of users that are accessing highly sensitive information, the types of classification of files that you have across your organization. So lots of information we can deliver in a small subset in that half-day workshop. We also have full assessment capabilities through service delivery, which is an ongoing residential type environment whereby we can put a resident on site to continue this automated and sort of life cycle management of information across your organization. And then spot check remediation projects. If you get an on-demand request to provide information and you actually have got no idea how you're going to find that information, we can have spot check remediation projects for short-term, 2-3 days. I need to find this information, Mr. Veritas, can you come and help me? So 3 very specific projects that will help you on this road to GDPR compliance. So look, with that, this is my parting slide before I'll open it up for any Q&A. Focus on the business challenges. We mentioned the data berg. This is the big worry. 52% of customers' information is classified as dark data. I've got no idea what it is. I've got no idea what file types they are. I don't even know if I should have them or whether I shouldn't have them. But I know I'm backing them up. I know I'm replicating them. That's your big worry. Once you've identified what that information is, you then need to find the subjects that are there to be forgotten. Data subjects need to be found to be forgotten. So tools such as Data Insight, as an example, will provide a 360-degree holistic view of every single piece of information that you have within your organization. Who owns the data? Who's allowed and secure to touch the data? Who's allowed to forward that information? Who's allowed to view the information? Where is the information stored? On what type of file, what type of storage array is the information stored, etc., etc. And then the final piece is what you keep must be protected. So it's all very well saying just delete the information I'm not meant to have. That's not a very pragmatic approach. So we have introduced this cyclical lifecycle framework, GDPR framework, whereby you can automate, manage, and control the life cycle of your information through Veritas technologies. And with that, thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Right, we've got a good 7 minutes for questions. Who's going to start? Yes?
Nobody.
How much? Good. It's always good to have someone.
How you doing?
Hi.
My name is Alexa. Are you a technical guy?
It can be, yes.
All right. So the question regarding the backups. So, do you have any idea how under GDPR can we, hold the data in backups, and we need to, let's say, erase data about the person, the data subject, which are not a customer anymore for us.
Yes.
But the data still sits in the backup. So how are you gonna, solve this riddle?
Sure. So effectively what you would do with Veritas is a product I was alluding to there is Data Insight. You need to identify that individual, as an example, clearly sitting on tape, LTO I would imagine, or on disk storage. Obviously much easier if it's on disk storage. The problem is if you're, do you have LTO drives? Okay, that's a problem, right? Because you don't even know if you can recover that data because it might be 10 years old, as an example. So having the ability through our backup technology to identify where that data sits is mission critical.
We can identify. The question is how we can erase that exact data about this person and leave the rest of the data.
We can do that. We have the tools and technology to do that, and it's a subcomponent of the backup technology. So we should take that take the question on. Too technical, but I will. I'll take it offline. We have technical people here actually from Veritas. So.
But for this question, you guarantee integrity of information?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Another question? I can't believe it's that simple.
I wish it was.
Can I ask then something?
You can, Glenn.
You started off and you didn't define data.
Okay.
And actually in my head, it's actually quite a big subject because, I mean, you've got hard data, which is someone's name, email and all that. And that's what people are coming back to me on all my pieces of paper. They say, we'll only keep this about you. But I mean, that's obviously nonsense because the moment that you press send, you are giving data.
Sure.
Which is that I'm a positive customer. I've pressed send. So where is that boundary for a company? Where's that boundary when in your thinking as a company between that hard data, name, address, email, all that stuff, and the soft data that surrounds everybody that actually is in many cases for things like recruitment, and your HR team is the actual important data.
Yeah.
How do you define those?
So when I say data, we're talking about all types of data. So that could be a Word document, it could be a PowerPoint, it could be an Oracle database, it could be an individual's name. As long as it's held in some form of soft copy. So clearly it can't be a physical document sitting on a table because our software can't recognise that. As long as our software is touching and backing up that data in some way, shape or form, we class that as data that we can manage through this lifecycle framework. I don't know if that answers your question.
But then can I just ask the audience for a show of hands of how many of you in your company have actually got clearly defined data that you should hold on someone already? Put your hand up if you've got clearly defined data. We must only hold A, B, C, and D, and not X, Y, and Z.
It's
okay, it's an ongoing...
evolving.
Good, hang on.
Maybe it's a business secret, but anyway, if you can answer, how many data categories you have in your system, maybe it's about this, that can identify data as personal data under GDPR. I'll show you some examples. So let's say CV, Circle Vitaya.
Sure.
With no name, no surname, no phone number, no email, just description of some person. File name, let's say 123. There is data inside. I described it myself. How you gonna?
How do you identify that data?
Identify that it's a personal data.
Okay,
and
so
it's my data, like Alexander's data.
Sure. That's a great question.
Good question.
So we have a data classification engine within our technology. That's point number one, right? But your question is specifically how do we classify within that data classification engine? What are the categories that we use? We are actually at the behest of our customers to tell us what are the typical classification types you would need. We have templates, right, that we can start from that we've worked with other customers on. But if once you start to give us more information through these remediation projects, we can then help to build that catalog or database, if you will, of what are the templates we should be using. We still have Veritas are very unique. We have the access to that information without getting too technical, because we touch everything through the backup. Right, everything's getting backed up. We actually see the catalog and therefore the metadata within every single file. Okay.
Okay, but if it's for me as a customer, is it when it's dark data? I don't know, as you say, what categories of
Sure.
data, what should I request from Veritas?
Yeah.
Then how are we gonna manage this 52%?
Well, I think the first thing is shining the torch on that dark data, right? Because customers just do not know what it is. So we can bring to the fore what that type of data is. It Word files? Is it databases? That's the first step, is identify the structure of that data.
How many categories you have?
Thousands. Thousands and thousands of categories.
Finish.
I'm done.
Sir,
Okay, thank you very much.
you get a certificate
All right. Amazing.
and more to carry home and a handshake for great. That was super. Thank you very much.
Thank you.